Hello, Tom Nunziato here from Stark County ESC, and we're going to discuss SAS EVOS Value-Added Diagnostic Reports. First, we're going to log into the EVOS Ohio dashboard. And the information that you're going to see is part of a dummy practice account with fake information. When you first land, you're going to land on your district page, and I'm going to jump over to a school. So you have district and we have school, and I've already predetermined that we're going to look at, scroll down here to Cascade Middle School. Again, I'm still on my value added page, but I'm going to jump to the diagnostics. So the information at Cascade Middle School that I see on my screen, I have my school name in the top left. We're looking at the 2022. We're looking at 6th grade ELA. As you notice, we were green for 6th grade ELA, but look at our diagnostics. We're going to discuss this. We're looking at growth. We tend to look at 5 groups or quintiles when looking at building our district diagnostic reports, and we have our bar graph. Over to the right, we have our student list. It says that our lowest group has 29, middle 30, 24, and so forth. Now, what does that mean? 29 in the lowest, which is right here. This means that in the state of Ohio, this group of students is in our lowest 20%. The reason we know it's 20% is that we're in groups of 5. That means in the state of Ohio, 29 of our students fell in the lowest 20%. You may or may not have that many students. You may have more or less. You may not have any at all. When you look at this, this is based on a 2-year average. So in ELA, on a 2-year average, these 29 students fell in the lowest 20%. If I'd like, I could add additional years. And in this case, we have data for 2021. And if you notice, it'll pop up in a different color. It'll allow us to see some trends. I'm going to remove that. We could add other subjects. Again, I could add 8th grade and 7th grade ELA. And every time you add one, it adds it as a different color so that maybe you want to look at your building as a whole. Again, I'm just going to remove these for visual purposes. If you have other access to other buildings or in your district or other districts, you will be able to add those also. So if you're in a large district that has multiple buildings that have 6th grade ELA, you'll be able to compare the data by clicking onto here and choosing. Now over here on the left, most of this will stay the same, that you don't really need to move around unless you're just exploring. But the one thing I like to add, so I come down to the bar graph. In the past, the diagnostic reports always showed up with a competency band. And you had the solid line and the dotted line. Well, what we're going to do is we now have the ability to add those. And then we're going to just look at the 68% competency band, which is the solid band, meaning that 68% of the data we are confident falls within this range. Not necessarily just looking at the bar, but looking at this competency or whisker, as we used to call it. At the bottom, we'll be able to see some information, including the number of students, and we have our colors. Now, if you notice, the colors are slightly different than the landing value added page. They're a lighter color because now they're using the word moderate evidence that the group exceeded the expected growth, evidence that the group met the expected growth, and yellow is moderate evidence that the group did not meet the expected growth. Part of that reason is that as you start breaking down the data, the smaller and smaller groups, the confidence of the data becomes less just because of sheer numbers and the statistical value. Just like on the value-added landing page, you have a glossary of some information, ways to group your students, and ways to change the graph. We're going to come back up and we're going to look. Now, as we look here, our expected growth is 0. 0 is always the expected growth. We are at a green, meaning that our growth fell between a -2 and +2. But if we look at our bars, a lot of our data is below the line, which means that we're probably in the negative side of the expected growth, but still fall between that -2 and 2 band. And if we scroll down, we could definitely see where we're at. And we have two areas, our middle group and our highest group, that definitely fall below the -2. But when you average them out, they still fall within this state allotted -2 to 2. When I look at our expected growth, our diagnostic bars, if I notice that my whisker is touching the green line, that means that these students met expected growth. Again, we can't see the top of this bar, but it's right on it. So this group met. This group is below. This group is below, and this group's just barely above. But if you notice, there's 9 students, and their average score was a -2.30. And look at that standard error of 2.79. That seems large. Has nothing to do with anything except for the fact that there's only 9 students in this data. Where if we come over here where we have 29 students, you see that the standard error is still smaller. Yes, it's still pretty high, but again, we're not dealing with the thousands or hundreds of students in a building, but we're breaking these up into smaller groups. This standard error also takes into consideration missing data, student movement, and other information that impacts the students. If I want to know who these students are, I could look at my lowest 20, and over here on the right panel, it says my groups. So I have 107 students total, 29 of the lowest. If I click my little arrow, I could see each student. I could actually even click on that student. We're looking at ELA, and we could see their history, regardless of where they were in the state of Ohio when they took the assessment. Now, if we notice, we have the blue line, which is the district. That is the district they were in when they took the test. The green represents the school percentile, and the red is the student. Now, again, maybe this student in 3rd grade spring did not take the assessment in your building or in your district. This represents their building, their district, that when the student took the time. So I could hit the back button to go back to the diagnostics. Again, since I clicked out of it, I'm going to go back and add my competency bands. And I like to look at the solid bands. We could look at this data and have lots of discussion on what does this represent. What is working here that these students that are in your lowest 20 are meeting or exceeding the expected growth? What's happening with our middle group that our students are falling behind their peers and meeting the expected growth? These are the conversations that come in to analyze a diagnostic. There's not necessarily a right or wrong answer, and you're not coming up with excuses, but you're trying to find patterns and understandings on why the students may not have met expected growth. Thank you.